Hi, my name is Phil. Welcome to my channel. I've recently published a book called The Ascension Code in order to help people understand the idea of ascension and what it really is, because there are too many people telling you online that ascension has something to do with Zen Buddhism, which it does to some extent, but not really. It's not the main focus of it. Ascension is a word that can be used for almost anything where you're going from one level to a higher level. For instance, even at work, you can ascend in position at work from a worker to a manager or something like that, or a managing director, etc. Going up in the ranks is ascending. It's a form of ascension. So the ascension, the main use of that word is to spiritualize a person from their physical nature. That's ascension. It means finding out the fullness of your own range as a discrete observer in the universe, let's say. You are not escaping that, but you are looking at the other side of existence with ascension so that you can know the fullness of existence. That's the point of it. And the means to ascend is answered in this book that I've published on purpose to help you understand that there's an intellectual quality to it and a Zen-like quality to it as well. Those two are very opposite. The Zen-like quality is about not thinking, and the intellectual quality obviously is all about contemplation and understanding from contemplation. These two issues become what's called the keys to heaven, and they are the means by which you ascend literally. But you can't suddenly use the intellectual issue of the second key to heaven without having any preparation or learning or education of some kind. And the education that you're engaging in is what we now call science. It must be science because you have to base your ideas on fact and what you see around you. The natural world is a perfect example and teacher for the kind of logic and reason you need to ascend. So we're actually surrounded by what we need in order to achieve this in the first place. The main question is, how do we access the outside world? What is it about the outside world that we're supposed to look at and understand? Well, if you look around you, you'll see, if you look at a flower, there's a pattern right in front of you. So there's some kind of organization behind it. There are other patterns in nature that it takes time to perceive. So if I plant a seed in the ground, I can't see anything until a bit of time has passed and water has soaked the ground to germinate the seed and turn it into a plant. So after some time, you can see that there's now a plant there. And after a bit more time, the plant is pollinated and reproduces the original seed that started it. So we have the idea of a cycle in the first place, but this is a cycle of abundance because we start with one seed by itself and we end up with a multitude of that seed. So it's repeated itself many, many times over. And we can model that in very simple terms geometrically by starting with a discrete point that represents our seed. If we keep adding points to that point and repeating it over and over again, we make a line, then a triangle, then a square, then a pentagon, a hexagon, etc., etc. We keep adding points ad infinitum. We end up with a sequence of polygons whose limit is a perfect circle, which is an infinitely sided polygon. However, we've gone from a discrete seed that has now lost its discreteness to a continuous circle that has a hole in the middle of it. If the circle represents the infinite, because it's an infinitely sided polygon philosophically and comparatively and allegorically, we can now think of an infinite whole as needing a definitive center. A definitive center helps us understand the complete range from discreteness to continuity. It closes that range so that now the entire range from 0 to infinity is available at once. So something that takes place over time becomes a complete identity, as it were. That principle there is of squaring the circle, as it's called. It can be represented as a 3-act play. In the first act, we introduce characters. In the second act, we relate them. And in the third act, we unify them. And we have a product, a result, a reasoned understanding that we can call the result. I think I just saw an orb go up the screen there. Or is it there? I think I just saw. I might get a few more. We'll see. So yeah, if we want to represent this principle of a 3-act play, or something that occurs over time, we can do it by using what's called discrete mathematics. And before you go thinking I'm going to introduce mathematics, I'm not. It's just a simple way of representing something with a point on a page and say, well, I'm going to use this point to represent this idea. And in this case, we're going to use the discrete point to represent our seed that we plant in the ground. And of course, the ground is continuous. So we can represent in very simple terms our continuity as 2 points with a line between them to say there is a continuity, there's a space here in which something can occur. And if we plant our discrete seed in there, we now have 3 points that relate to each other, which is our second act. In our third act, they reproduce the original seed if we're talking about a plant. So the seed now is the product in the third act, and that gives us a 4th point. So we have 1 point to represent the seed, 2 for the ground. When they relate, we get a triangle of 3 points that we can join together, and they reproduce our fourth point there, giving us a sequence of 4 logical points that all relate to each other, whose structure is referred to as a tetrahedron. So those 4 points can be represented by a 3-act play. And we can apply the 3-act play to the process of squaring a circle, where we start with a point. We end up with a continuous circle as our second act in squaring the circle. And then we define a central point to that undefined infinity in the third act. Defining anything in the infinite is impossible. So what we're doing by squaring the circle in application to a human being that becomes ascended is achieving the so-called impossible. See, ascension is supposed to be impossible, but it's a lot easier than you think. It's like encountering someone who's gone through a maths degree, and you can't get your head around maths in the first place, and you see them and you say, well, how was it? How was all that education? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Did you have to almost kill yourself to get to the end of it? And they'll say, no, it was actually okay. You don't realize how simple it is because you've got too much information to sort out. In life, we have to sort through information, and online are thousands of people all telling you that ascension is nothing more than finding Zen Buddhism. It's about Zen, apparently, when it's not. The first key to heaven is about Zen. The second key is about intellectualism and intelligence. You need to be intelligent. In other words, have a developed set of ideas that you can that you've derived from nature that you can now apply to a thought experiment that allows you to unify dual opposites, as we saw in our play, because that's what's going on. Dual opposites of discreteness and continuity are being merged and unified to produce the original seed, in fact, creating a cycle or a loop. So metaphysics is that which is beyond physics, and we can only define that as a process. See, metaphysics is a process that involves physical reality and you. So in the same sense that we unify a seed and the continuous ground, you, if you think of yourself as now a discrete entity, an observer, you come into the physical world as a discrete observer, and the world around you is continuous. That's the same philosophical principle as a seed and the ground. Yeah? You're the seed, and the world around you is the ground in which you're planted. Hopefully, that relationship of you and the world is going to produce and illuminate out of you, which is an angel. Now, before you go thinking I'm religious, I'm not. I'm not religious at all. I've never been into any religion. I just like reality and truth myself. The word angel is very Christian. It comes from the word angle, which refers to an angle of light. And of course, God becomes the word El. El means God. So angel is an angle of God, but God is light. Therefore, it's an angle of light. And that refers to illumination. Okay, there's a lot more to say about that. But an angel is someone who becomes illuminated and now knows the fullness of their own range as a discrete observer. And that's the point. It's about getting to know yourself and the fullness of your existence and your being that you won't get to know if you pursue a very normal life and keep putting off any philosophical contemplation. So I'm giving you in this book the kind of philosophical contemplation that leads you to your own ascension. You need to know these patterns. That's what I developed before mine, because the point of all this intellectual contemplation is to get you to a point where you can unify dual opposites in your understanding and realize they are two aspects of the same thing. And that will ascend you. However, it won't ascend you if you simply do that by itself, if you never go into Zen and you never encounter who we call God. Just to give you a sense of who or what God is, in my understanding after I've met him, God is exactly like your infinite future self. So imagine yourself in the infinite future as if you go through many lives to develop yourself into full understanding of your own existence, as I've just explained. Your infinite future self is going to be you that has gone through everything they need to, and they've become ascended into perfection beyond any need for anything physical. That is the person you meet. That is what we call God. So it's your perfected self, God. It's just a word, God. You don't even have to be religious about it. You know, I'm not condemning religion. I'm just saying you don't need to be religious if you don't want to be, because a lot of people like common sense. They don't like picking up the Bible and being told that God is this and that, and how many pages are there to read? I haven't got time for that. I'm too busy. You understand? So my book is designed to help people who are busy and don't have much time to go through all these things and fathom them for themselves. I've kind of done it for you, just to point out what you need to get your head around, as it were, or the kind of things you might want to think about. And they really focus on this idea of process, the idea of something being a certain way, and an event occurs and it changes the situation. So you get an expanded view and you understand better. So if we apply this three-act play, this sequence of three-act play now to reality, as if metaphysics is like a seed that grows reality called the cosmos. the cosmos can now be thought of as a tree. And of course, a tree reproduces its original seed, proving the original seed was there in the first place. So there's a suggestion. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it wasn't there. So what we're saying with metaphysics is the seed that has come about from a process that occurs in time, but that process in ascension has produced a metaphysical seed that exists at the start of time. It produces the universe. Very difficult thing to get your head round unless you see the process in terms of the vegetative cycle of seed to new seed, because that shows you what it is. It's the same principle. So if we apply that now to our 3-act play, we can see that the first act is our metaphysical seed. The second act is the cosmos that's produced from it, like a tree. And then we have throughout the cosmos energetic condensations known as black holes that behave as though they are the multiple seed product of the tree at this stage, at the stage of energetic appreciation. And the great thing about this 3-act play application idea is that we can apply it at different scales. If you apply it to the cosmos by itself and ignore the metaphysical seed almost, you can look at the physical nature of what is metaphysics, and the only aspect of that that's physical is the creative principle, which is a light produced in ascension at a moment in time that takes you, the individual, into timelessness, which is the other side of light speed. At light speed, there is no time. That condition is always accessible from any point in time in the cosmos by you, the individual. And the point of showing this process, the idea that there's a seed that makes a tree that makes more seeds, we can apply that to the absolute nature of existence, in that if we have God, who is all there is, being the truth, because the truth is all there is, really, the only thing that's extant. The truth, because of its nature, is not physical. So God being truth and spirit is oneness. Being one, there is aloneness. There's no companionship. It's undefined, you see. So there needs to be some kind of definitive process that produces companionship. In other words, reproduces the original seed of metaphysics and turns people who ascend, in this sense, as the product seeds in the cosmos, turns them into angels who can all relate to each other at this very high philosophical level. So that's the process, that's the application overall of what is supposed to be going on in reality. We're here to become angels. We're here to know ourselves in fullness. And of course, that is an enjoyment in itself. That's a great pleasure. That's a great joy. So life is not about misery. It's about finding joy in your existence, knowing the fullness of your own range. See, I hope that makes some kind of sense. It's a very simple way of looking at reality to answer the question of why are we here and what are we doing and what can we do that's important, what is meaningful. Because the universe, if it's all going into a black hole, none of it is meaningful. It's only meaningful in certain terms as a means to an end in this sense. And the end is more to do with you than it. See, it's a functional thing, the universe, in that sense. Like a tree is a function that reproduces the original seed into an abundant array. So that's the idea being presented. Thanks very much for listening, and I'm going to go through some sacred geometry next time and take a look at Hampton Court in another video as well, because that is absolutely fascinating. What's been put on the ground around Hampton Court will blow your mind. So I'll see you then.